Hi, it's Summer and I'm finally filming my January wrap-up. I read 9 books in January and I really liked a lot of them, so I'm excited to tell you about them. As far as wrap-ups go, I wanted to just say really quick that I think for this year I'm going to make like mood boards for all of the books that I've read and include a picture of the book, my Goodreads review of it, along with like some pictures that I feel like kind of go with the vibe and stuff like that. So if you want to see any of those for these books that I'm going to talk about, you can check out this Instagram post. This is what I'm going to be trying to do for every month of the year with all the books that I've read. Instagram only lets you do 10 pictures for a carousel, so I'm thinking that if I ever read like more than 9 books in a month, because I have to have like my cover picture, like with my pile of books and stuff, you know, for the aesthetic. So I'm thinking if I ever read more than 9 books in a month, that I'll just pick maybe like my favorites to make a mood board for, because if it was like a 2-star read and I didn't really like it, I'm not really going to be motivated to make a mood board anyway. Anyway though, that's my new thing for this year. Now I'm going to get into the books that I read. I sadly did not start the year out on a very good note. I read The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Sylvia Marino Garcia as my first book of 2023 and I gave it 2 stars. This is pitched as a dreamy reimagining of the island of Dr. Moreau set against the backdrop of 19th century Mexico. The main character is Carlotta, her father is Dr. Moreau, and one of the other main characters is the assistant of her father. Carlotta in this book I think is like 16 or 17 or something. She definitely behaves like a teenager in this book, like constantly kind of going against her father. She's very rebellious, but she also wants to like do right by these hybrids that her father has made. But throughout this book she really is just kind of like annoying and very kind of like a lovesick teenager kind of a thing. You know the drill. I'm going to read my Goodreads review for this one. I said I wanted to love this so bad, but I should have DNF'd it. Boring plot and characters. I thought Carlotta was so annoying and this felt very juvenile despite being an adult book. The writing felt very repetitive because of how the perspectives were written. It was also very predictable and not a horror at all, despite being advertised as one. Super disappointing. So yeah, honestly, I wish that I would have DNF'd this like 50 pages in, but especially like 100 pages in. It just was not for me. The only reason that I pushed myself to read it and finish it though was because I had purchased a physical copy. I have an easier time DNFing an audiobook that I just like pick up from Libby or Scribd or something because it's like not as much of a money investment. But when I spend money on like a new release like this, because I bought it I think pretty soon after it was released and it's such a beautiful cover, I just felt like I needed to finish it. But honestly, I don't really think it was worth it. I was really wanting this to get like really horror-y and like body horror and stuff with all of the like creatures and hybrids that her father was making, and it really didn't. I honestly kind of kept picturing the hybrids as these guys from the Sleeping Beauty movie. Like they weren't scary, they were just kind of like goofy and honestly kind of depressing. I'm sure that this book has all kinds of like messages and metaphors and like comparisons to like current day things that are happening, but like I just could not get past how much I wasn't enjoying it to like analyze those things. So anyway, 2 stars. I'm really sad about it. I don't think I'm going to try anything else by this author. From what I've heard from people, her books and her writing style are pretty similar to each other from book to book, so I think this is going to be the only one from her that I read. After that, I was so happy to read one that I enjoyed. I read In the Weeds by B.K. Borison. This is Love Light Farms number 2. I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5 stars. For this one I said I loved this. Such a cute romance, and I loved both of the main characters and all of the small town vibes. I didn't love all of the miscommunication, but it definitely didn't ruin it for me. This one follows Beckett and Evelyn, who are characters in the first book. I don't think that you need to have read the first book or read these books in order to understand each one individually, but I definitely think that they're better that way. And Love Light Farms is just so good that I definitely think you should read that one. It's tricky because that one is very obviously set in winter, so it's kind of hard to want to read it like during the summer or something, so you have to kind of like wait for the right time to read all of these ones, but it's so worth it. Evelyn is a social media influencer who is kind of like burnt out of social media, and she's kind of maybe wanting to do a little bit of like a career change. So she decides that she wants to take a break from all of it and go to the last place that she felt like herself and felt like she was able to rest and feel peaceful and stuff, which was Love Light Farms. When she was there the last time, she ran into Beckett, but there was kind of like some awkwardness between them in the first book. So in the second one, they're kind of like working through things, getting to know each other more. She interacts a ton with the other people that live in this town. Beckett is also just like the absolute sweetest, and he actually reminds me of my husband in a lot of ways. So I think I liked him even more because of that. This was just so sweet and cute, but also had that very good spice that B.K. Borison always throws in. I would say this one is a little bit of like a second chance romance. It has forced proximity, and yeah, I just loved this. I definitely recommend it. After that, I read The Winter People by Jennifer McMahon. I read this one and the next book for the New Year New Reads readathon that was hosted by Gabby. I was a co-host and it was so much fun. So if you want any more kind of like in-depth thoughts as I'm reading the books and stuff, you can check out that vlog. I'll try to put it up in the cards. I gave this one a 4.5 and it was so good. I loved it. For this one, I said this book was so creepy and atmospheric. It went in directions that I never even saw coming and was intrigued from the first page, even with the slower paced parts. I also loved how all of the different perspectives connected in the end. My only complaint is that the ending felt a tiny bit anticlimactic and I wanted it to be just a little bit creepier. I loved this though, and I'm going to be thinking about it for a long time. And I definitely do think about it even like a month later. The main word that I think of when I think of this book is atmospheric. While I was reading it, this book just made me feel cold because of like the descriptions and stuff. It takes place during the winter. It's the perfect winter thriller. I listened to this on audio, so I don't know if this is how it's represented in the physical book, but I'm pretty sure that part of this book is done in like epistolary form. We're reading this person's like journal and diary entries. So that's one of the perspectives that we get. And then we also get a couple more that are more like current day perspectives. Like I said in my review though, I do wish that it had gone just like a little bit farther with the horror aspects. Like I wish there was maybe more like body horror or just like an extra bit of intensity added to the ending or something. But overall, I really loved this. I definitely recommend it. Next, I picked up Shady Hollow by Juno Black. This is a cozy mystery. The covers for this series are like my absolute favorite. They are so pretty and I feel like they fit the vibes of the book really well too. For this one, I said this was so unique and unlike anything I've read before. Such a cozy little mystery with quirky woodland creatures living in a small town. Definitely gave me Fantastic Mr. Fox vibes. I was getting a little bit annoyed with Vera talking to so many suspects and learning next to nothing new each time, but that was pretty much my only issue. I can't wait to read the next books. I will say that this one kind of took me a minute to really fully get into and wrap my mind around because it is a little bit different trying to read about these like woodland creatures as like people basically. Like Vera, the main character, she's a fox, but she's also like, she has a day job and she's a reporter and stuff. But once I kind of like made that connection that it's kind of just like Fantastic Mr. Fox, I was able to visualize it a little bit more. My other complaint with Vera, like not really finding anything out with her interviews and stuff, was happening mainly towards the end. I felt like she would talk to people and take up like a whole page or two of like dialogue between them, but like nothing, like no new information would come out of it. And it almost just kind of felt like the authors were trying to like prolong the story just a little bit longer to like make it like a higher page count or something. I doubt that's what really happened, but that's what it felt like to me. It just kind of felt like fluff. Such a cozy book, really cute characters. I loved the writing. I talk more about that in the New Year New Reads reading vlog. And I gave this one 4 stars. After that, I read Lost in the Moment and Found by Shauna McGuire. This is book number 8 in the Wayward Children series. For this one, I said this one gave me the same magic feeling that the first couple of books in the series did. I loved the story so much. It felt so much heavier and sad than the others in the series, but it added so much more depth to the book. I loved the magic and how the doors worked in this one, and as with all of the other books by this author, I loved the writing. This series has been very like hit and miss for me lately with some of the newer books that have come out, and so I was really afraid that this one was going to kind of disappoint me too. But oh my gosh, I'm so glad that it didn't. I loved this so much. It was incredibly hard to get through, especially like in the very beginning. I literally almost started crying just in the author's note before the book started. It was just really sad. But I just love how the magic in this one, it feels like the magic in all of the other books where it's really fantastical and like wonderful and kind of a happy thing, but it also has this kind of like sinister side to it. I love in this one, it's slightly different than all of the other books as far as the doors. In every other book, there's kind of only really like one door mentioned. And in this one, it kind of takes place at, I think that they call it a nexus, where she's kind of like in this in-between world where there are like many doors. And so you get to see a lot of different worlds that she goes into and stuff. There's always a price with the magic though. So I don't know, it was very interesting, very whimsical. I loved the main character. I loved the plot that we followed. And just like the ending, oh my gosh, I loved it. Such an easy 5-star. After that, I picked up Finley Donovan is Killing It by El Casamano. On Goodreads, I gave this one 4 stars, but honestly, now that I've had some time away from it, I think that it's closer to like a 3 or a 3.5. I really don't remember a whole lot about this one. I said this was a fun, crazy book, but I had a hard time rooting for Finley for a while because I didn't like her. I really liked the banter and the friendship between her and her nanny though. I really had a hard time with Finley in the beginning because like she's going through all of these things that are happening to her with her divorce and just like her job not going well. There's a lot of things at risk for her. She's like really struggling financially. I was having a really hard time with her because she's like a struggling author. She's been having writer's block and hasn't been able to figure out like her next book and really hasn't even attempted starting to write it yet. And I'm just like, okay, listen, if you're like having such a hard time paying your bills, and you're like afraid you won't be able to support your children, get a more financially stable job until you're able to pick up writing again. But I know that if that would have happened, like the whole entire plot wouldn't have happened. It's like I know why it needed to be there, but it was driving me crazy. For anyone that doesn't know the premise of this one, Finley Donovan gets like mistaken as a hit woman, but she needs money, so girls gotta do what a girl's gotta do. But it was entertaining, it was crazy. I thought it was funny how everything just kind of like fell into her lap and how things were like happening to her and not like she was really choosing to do any of them. But like I said, it's not super memorable and I don't think it's gonna be a new favorite. I'm also kind of trying to figure out if I want to continue in the series or not. I've heard that the next 2 books aren't great compared to the first one, so I might wait a little bit longer to hear more of my friends' thoughts on that before I pick up the next books. After that, I read Off the Deep End by Lucinda Berry. I really did not like this one. I gave it 2 stars, and I feel really bad saying that because I know that a lot of my friends love Lucinda Berry. The premise of this one is that there's a mom and she's driving her son and her son's friend home from like sports practice or something. She ends up having to like swerve out of the way of something and she goes into a lake. Then she wakes up, they're underwater, she's panicking, and she just grabs like the first hand that she can find and swims up to the surface. And when she gets up there, she realizes that she saved the friend instead of her own son. And then months after all of that happened, the friend who survived goes missing. And there's kind of talk of like a serial killer maybe being behind it and stuff. So for this one, I said the premise and the first bit of this one definitely had me intrigued, but that ending was just not it. The pacing was really off for me as well. It really lagged in the middle. There honestly isn't really anything good I have to say about it, but it also wasn't the worst thing I've ever read. There were no breadcrumbs to lead you to how the book ended, and that is something that I absolutely need. Or at least in this book, I really needed it, because the ending, like, you could not have gotten there on your own. There were no clues leading up to it. And so it just kind of like took you off guard, and I just didn't like it. Also, there were a lot of loose ends that never got tied up, or at least one main one in my head that never got tied up that I really was kind of invested in. So yeah, I really did not like it. 2 stars. After that, I read a book that I just loved. It's Set on You by Amy Lee. I gave this one 4.5 stars, but honestly, like, it might be a 5. This one follows a curvy, plus-sized fitness influencer named Crystal. She preaches body positivity and going to the gym and working out to feel good, not just to like lose weight and stuff. And she has a pretty big online presence. One day at the gym, there's a guy who has stolen her precious squat rack and he doesn't want to give it back and he's kind of being a jerk. And so she decides that he is her gym nemesis. So it's a little bit of like enemies to lovers. For this one, I said it had great commentary on cyberbullying and being curvy, plus-sized, fat in society. I loved hearing all of the body positive things that I've been working on myself talked about in a book. The romance was so cute too. I didn't love all of the pop culture references though, and Scott loses points for not liking cats. But I really liked this one and definitely recommend it. That is definitely one thing about Amy Lee's writing, is that she really likes pop culture references, so you kind of just have to know that going in. Also the spice, very good. But I mainly just loved this book because the characters were awesome in the first place, and then also I just loved all of the conversations that were happening around like health at every size and body positivity and body neutrality. I'm just like a huge advocate for that kind of stuff, and I've been working really hard on that for myself, so I just loved seeing it represented in a book. As a curvy mid-sized to plus-size person, I can say that the representation in this book was awesome, and I just really loved it, and I could not recommend it enough. And then the last book that I read in January was Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. A lot of my friends have given this 5 stars and just like loved it, so I was really excited to pick it up. And I actually got to buddy read this with my friend Heather from Heather's Hondana on Instagram. Also, that just reminded me that my other friend Amy on Instagram, her and I bought this shirt at like the same time, so it's like our little friend shirt, and I love that for us. So I just had to give that a little shout out. Anyway though, back to the book. The main characters in this one definitely come from different backgrounds. Daniel is from a small town and he runs a B&B, and then Alexis is from a big city and is a doctor. They both have a lot of kind of like family drama and baggage, and also their families have kind of like left them legacies that they have to kind of worry about. This book starts out with Alexis getting her car stuck in a ditch, and Daniel helps her, like tows her out of it and stuff, and they end up having like a one-night stand type of situation, but afterwards they just can't stop thinking about each other. For this one, I said this book was definitely worth the hype. It was a really sweet romance, but there were also hard-hitting elements in the story. The banter and conversations between the characters were one of my favorite things in this book. It felt like real conversations that people would have, and they weren't too cheesy. The only problem that I had with this was the main character getting in her own way as far as letting herself be happy in the relationship. Also, looking back, I kind of wish that this wasn't as closed door as it was. We do get some spicy scenes described and stuff later on in the book that we get to kind of experience. I just wish that we would have gotten to see a little bit more sprinkled throughout the book instead of it all just being at the end. And then I was getting really frustrated, like I said, with Alexis kind of getting in her own way, because like for most of the book, they're like dating. You can tell that they're like in love with each other. And then she just keeps reminding him like, oh, too bad it's not gonna work out. And I'm like, bitch, shut up. I did really like though, like I said in my review, that this had a lot more like heavy hitting discussions in it. These two are just kind of surrounded by like really shitty people, honestly. And so you just get to read about them dealing with those people and also just trying to like make their relationship work. But I do think that my favorite thing out of this whole entire book was the banter and the conversations between these two. They were so flirty and fun, and I just felt like they felt really real. Basically, I just have repeated everything that I said in my review, but I really liked this. I gave it 4 stars. That is everything that I read in January though. I was really happy that I read 9 books because I was kind of nervous, like starting out the year, that I maybe wouldn't have like the momentum that I would have wanted starting a new year and stuff, but I feel like 9 books is really good for me. And I also just found some new favorite books, so I'm very happy about that. Let me know in the comments if you read any of the same books as me or what your favorite book that you read in January was, and I will see you in the next one.